Good afternoon, my friends. My name is Michael Cole, and welcome to 12-Step Spirituality Facebook Live. Many of you have been on this page for a while, and I know we have some new people in the community. This is our very first Facebook Live. We're going to call it number one, with someone that I've got a lot of years friendship and studentship with. As a guest today, and his name is Mr. Adam G. And Adam, I consider to be a great teacher. I consider he's been a mentor. He sponsors me in my own recovery. And he had a few minutes this afternoon to come and engage in a conversation that he calls living in the pause. So I'm eager to get the conversation going. I'm going to say a little prayer that the Wi-Fi gods are working for us. He's in the green room as we speak. Let me see if we can go get him. And there he is, the magic of technology. Hi, Adam.
Hi, it is so great to be here, Michael.
Oh, yeah, exciting stuff. And you and I've been kind of planning this for a little while. And if this goes the way we hope it will, this will be the first of many. So let's get started. I'm eager to just listen to you talk a little bit about this title, which is just extraordinary, Living in the Pause. What's that about?
Sure. Well, as you know, it took me a while, but once I really got going with the program, I took to heart into action. And I got really busy with sponsoring and service and fellowship and speaking. And then about 10 years ago, I had a moment of grace where I was still unhappy, still uncomfortable. And somehow I was able to slow down and pause enough to realize I was so busy doing so much that I was never taking a pause. And when I finally paused, I realized that I had just been doubling down on living this self-directed life. And if I was going to live a higher power-directed life, I needed to find a way to pause and then live in the pause.
I love it. And you know, we could probably devote the next few hours to just talking about this very profound idea, this word that you're using to kind of point to this thing that we call pausing. And anyone that's had a little bit of time in recovery knows what that means. It means you just stop and get a little bit God conscious. So it's extraordinary. So what your recovery was like on the first 22, gave us a gist of that. It somewhere in your journey, this hit you. This like you had the proverbial, what happened to me to cause me to take pause. And I know you talked a little bit about it. Can you give us just a little bit more?
Yeah. So like I said, it took me a while to really get going with the steps. I would say the first 10 years was a period of don't drink and go to meetings. I call it my associate membership period. And when I moved to Minnesota at 10 years, I was really struggling, and I knew it. It wasn't going in the right direction for me. And I plugged into the Twin Cities community of recovery, which is amazing. And I rededicated myself to the program, and I got very active. And I was doing everything, service at every level, a home group, sponsoring many men. I was being sponsored. Taking all number of 12-step calls. And so that's what was going on with me. At 22 years, I'm doing all these things. I'm doing it all right. I'm doing it by the book, Michael. And I realized that I was restless, irritable, and discontent. I was plagued by everyday anxieties. I would have a reaction to life that was disproportionate. I'd be fearful and angry, especially with the people that I loved, so I was totally irritable. And I was, and we've talked about this a lot, very prone to listening to that inner dialogue that was critical, that tells me I'm not enough, but also is judgmental. So it's judgmental to the outside, it's judgmental to the inside. So I am 22 years in, doing it all, restless, irritable, and discontent.
And then it sounds like, the student is ready for the teacher, the second part of the 11th step, the meditation. You were introduced to this community called centering prayer, and that was like, it sounds like it was your on-ramp into, okay, there's something else to know about recovery.
Sure. And fortunately, I was in this mode, I was looking. So two things, I was in a group that read the big book, and I must have read this a dozen times, but at the end of There Is a Solution, there's this phrase where Bill writes, if what we have learned and felt and seen means anything at all, it means that all of us are children of a living creator with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms. I'd never really considered that, forming a relationship. And then I was reading from Language of the Heart, which are letters that Bill Wilson wrote to the Grapevine. And when Bill Wilson was 22 years sober, he was in exactly the same place as me.
Yeah, I'm going to hold this up because this is your quote.
That's it. And he was doing all the stuff that I just listed, and he said he wasn't feeling great. And he said what you just put up there. Go ahead and put that up again. It says, the chances are better than even that we shall locate our trouble in the misunderstanding or neglect of AA's step 11, prayer, meditation, and the guidance of God. The other steps can keep most of us sober and somehow functioning, but step 11 can keep us growing if we try hard and work at it continuously. And this hit me, Michael, like a bolt out of the blue. It was so clear that this was the missing piece because I wasn't doing any of it.
Well, I knew you. I think I came in when you were in 10 years, so I knew you in the second 10, and I was in meetings with you. So I'm sure you and I read that, had conversations, but there's something about, when you're ready, you're ready. And it sounds like at 22, which he's pointing to, which, by the way, I think is more than a coincidence, it went clunk for you, and that was an awakening that sounds like it took you to the next phase in your recovery.
Yep, and I immediately tried to meditate. And I went home and I set up my chair and I got my books and I couldn't do it. I couldn't stick with it. I got out of the chair after a couple minutes. I said, nuts. And but I knew I had to do it. And I started a group with a guy, Big Ted. He had come from Oregon. He had a format for a meeting. He was looking to start a meditation group, and so we did. And so for 1 hour, once a week, with 10 minutes, that's it, 10 minutes of meditation, I started this. That was the entirety of my meditation practice every week. And guess what, Michael? My Thursdays started going better, a lot better. And I couldn't explain it. It was just this sliver of well-being. But my Thursdays went better when I spent 10 minutes meditating in the morning with other people in recovery.
So it sounds like you got you and when you say my Thursdays got better, that was what was it, the day of or the morning after or the day after you do the meeting with Big Ted, and you somewhere in there you make a connection that what if there's something to pausing for a few minutes, getting quiet, and this new experience in recovery that we always read about, but it's like when's that going to happen?
Right, and so you'd think, oh, great. So we were meditating at 6:30 in the morning on Thursday. My Thursdays went great, and then you'd think, well, boy, he's just going to meditate every day now. Isn't this great? But it didn't quite work that way. But I was sponsoring a guy who was doing centering prayer, and he had told me about it in the past, and I had given him the whole yeah, sounds great. And now I went back to him, and he's a friend of ours, John. You know John S.
Yes.
And he told me about his practice and invited me to where he does it at St. Thomas More on Tuesdays. And that was it for me. And then I started doing centering prayer with John. And everything changed after that.
So now, how many years have you been on this, I'm going to call it this next piece, the centering prayer, the contemplative prayer, the pausing, the living in the pause? And has it been 8 years, 10 years? And then the big question that everyone wants to know, so how's your life different now? Like, how has that changed and evolved your recovery?
Right. So I've been doing it for 10 years. And what that actually means is almost daily. There's a few days I miss, but almost daily meditation practice several times a week, supported by other in-centering prayer groups. I find that a key part of what I'm doing. And the first realization was oh my God, I can do this. Whereas before,
Yeah.
I couldn't stay in the chair for 2 minutes. Now I can do it for 20 minutes. My Saturday group sits for 30 minutes. The time flies by. The benefits keep coming. So what it's like today, well, the benefits for me are so deep, Michael. I have much less of that inner monologue that I told you about before, less of the judgment outward, less of the judgment inward. I have a real hunger for more quiet and stillness. I have a much heightened awareness of God working in my life, much more gratitude for the things that are in my life. And there was just this major pivot in my life from looking for God outside to starting to go inside to find God. And, that the daily anxieties in particular and my fearful, angry reaction to life, they ramped down. And I wasn't doing something else that would have changed that peace. And it almost seemed inexplicable to me. How could sitting silently have that impact? But it had a real impact for me.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it. I was holding up that PowerPoint slide because when you and I were going through that, it's like, oh, okay, I see now why this practice should matter to me if I'm ready for the next stage or growth in my spirituality as it relates to recovery. And then somewhere in there, Adam, you've got a PowerPoint that I just love. You took an excerpt out of the big book. We pause when agitated or doubtful, to practice. Tell the viewer just a little bit about that piece, because that rings true for a lot of us. And as we're watching this and listening to this conversation, it's like, oh yeah, so that's why this sounds and feels familiar.
Yeah. So that's a new skill that I developed. I'm able to pause when agitated or doubtful. So when my reaction to life is activating my character defects, before I would just be right in there. And now I'm able to pause, redirect my energy to seek and do God's will in that moment. I don't do this perfectly, Michael. I still react with the best of them. But before it was all reaction. I was just reacting. Now I have that ability to pause and invite God in when I know I am getting triggered. So this living in the pause is really, it's just a different way of doing life. And it's where the 12 steps are directing me. And it's where I abandon self-direction and then try out this other direction, right? All my discomfort, all my neuroses, all the restless, irritable discontent, that's the result of me thinking I'm the best person to manage and direct my life. And that happened, I was in that mode before I picked up my first drink, while I was drinking, and for 22 years after I got sober. So most of my prayer life has been, God, please remove my discomfort. That's the result of me living that way. And centering prayer opens me up to this new way of prayer. It's this conscious relationship with the God of my understanding, which opens me to receiving God's love, opens me to being other directed, and ultimately opens me to being healed around my defects of character. And at that point, I have almost nothing to do with that. I just show up and it happens.
Yeah, as I'm listening, 2 points come, and I want to see if we can wrap some closure around it. One, and I don't know if you said this to me, or we were in a room or rooms to listen to this, but this whole idea of, responsibility, taking responsibility for our life, that's not front page news, but the word responsible or responsibility now is 2 words with a hyphen. Responsibility, the ability to be responsive, is tied to the willingness to live in the pause and to center and to surrender. And I'm getting goosebumps now, and somewhere in there, as we practice it, like you said, oh my God, this is working. There's a newness that comes through us that it's like, and that's the gift. I think that ability is as much a fruit of grace, or grace, fruit of faith, as it is a skill or a competency.
Yep. You put it perfectly. And it is a new way of doing life. And I fought for that old way for 22 years. Now that I'm sober, I'm running the show and it's going to be great. And into action and do all these things. Pause. And God entered in. And now responsible in life. I'm responding in a way that is God-centered, not Adam-centered.
Nice.
And it makes all the difference.
Now, I want to have the last point of our conversation before we bring this to an end is really, I just love this last PowerPoint slide. I want you to speak to it, how it used to be as it relates to step 11 to how it is now. And while you're talking about that, with your permission, I want to hold it up for the viewer to look at.
Right. So, yeah, I mentioned that a second ago. All my prayers before were looking for a God that was outside of me to bring me comfort for the discomfort I had from running my own life. And now prayer is this different experience where I'm going inside, I am spending conscious time with my higher power and experiencing that love and healing in ways I could never imagine.
Yeah, I think that's the paradox, is that, before centering, it's praying for, I'm just going to speak for myself, praying for my conditions to change, and now it's surrendering, and somewhere in that place, that space, we're gifted with a better experience of conditions, whether those conditions change or not, and sooner or later they do. It's like the conditions catch up to the surrender, and that's like the gift with purchase, and therein lies faith.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we've just said we're going to keep it sweet, short, and simple. I think we're inside of our 20 minutes, so it was just an extraordinary conversation. There's some people that are kind of posting, saying that they're really getting a lot out of it, and one said, I've been practicing centering prayer for a little bit over a year. It's a game changer for me. If I had to choose only one tool in my arsenal, it would be meditation. So it sounds like you hit the bullseye this afternoon, my friend.
Yeah, I love this, and people come to it when they're ready, and I hope they see this conversation when they're ready, because it changes everything about sobriety and recovery.
Nice. Well, just for the viewers, there's going to be a lot of people that will watch this after the fact. We will edit this down and repost it on the page, and we want to invite people that watch the interview on the page, any comments, feedback, input, because I have a feeling this is one of many conversations that we'll have, and we'll use this as the 12-Step Spirituality channel, if you will.
This has been a great pleasure. I'm really grateful for our friendship, Michael. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Adam. We're going to say goodbye to the viewer, and stay on the beam, and we'll see you on campus.
Bye-bye.